Shabbat Shalom. It is so lovely to be here with all of you, albeit as continuing under very strange circumstances. But one of the things that's great about the Jewish calendar and great about our experience living through the Jewish calendar is that although times change and our situation changes, the experience of this period of time that stretches really from after Tisha B'Av, but most especially starting in Elul through the high holidays, that experience of what it means to be introspective and thoughtful about our own moments where we have fallen short, that experience remains the same. In some ways, what's been so interesting over the last few months is that many of us are interacting much more often with only a very small group of people, some of whom are our family. And it is, of course, our family that we often end up having the most moments where, shall we say, we feel that we have something to apologize for as we move into the holiday season. And it was very interesting, therefore, to notice that in this week's parashah, we actually have a moment that references back to an experience of sin within a family, a moment of insult within a family. The parsha this week is very clear that in the case of a skin disease, we have to be very careful and to do exactly what the priests tell us to do, because God has commanded them in how we can be cured. And then it goes on to say, Zachor et asher asa Adonai Elohecha leMiriam. Remember what God did to Miriam on the journey after you left Egypt. And of course, this is a reference back to the moment back in Bamidbar, in Numbers, when Miriam and Aharon speak against Moses. They gossip, perhaps, or they slander him regarding the Cushite woman that he had married. And in that moment, Miriam is afflicted with tzara'at, this sort of scaly disease of the skin. And of course, it is known in our tradition that tzara'at, this scaly disease, is caused by slander. In fact, Rashi says, commenting on this verse, if you do not want to be afflicted with skin ailments, do not speak slander. And that is the most well-known way to understand what happened in that moment. And in some sense, that's a perfect reference point for us as we begin to think about this idea of sin, of people whom we have harmed. And in some sense, the idea of referencing back to this sin that Miriam had is a good chance for us to be introspective about the sins that we have done. And there's this beautiful midrash where it talks about how God, as a king, is very happy with Miriam when she praises him at the sea. She, of course, picks up her timbrels and leads the song at the sea among all of the women. And at this point, God, as king, according to the Midrash, is so pleased. And then in this moment, when she criticizes Moshe, when she criticizes Moses, then God is extra angry with her. And so that's really a story about sin. But what I want to perhaps suggest tonight is that actually we can read this story in a very different way. This story can really be about forgiveness and something even more important, empathy. We all perhaps remember that when Moses sees that his sister is afflicted, he prays to God, El na rafanala, please heal her. And the rabbis continue by saying that Moses is saying, Master of the universe, you've granted me the power of healing. And if you heal her, all is well. But if you do not heal her, I, Moses, will heal her. The idea is that Moses immediately forgives her. And of course, forgiveness is a part of this process as well. It's not just about being introspective about our own sinfulness, the places that we have fallen short. It's about being willing to forgive those who ask for our forgiveness. And there's a third midrash that I think actually takes us even a little further, and that I think is a beautiful way to think about this period of time. There's a beautiful midrash, and it teaches this. Moses is compared in this moment, when he cries out to the Lord, he's compared to someone who used to have a chain of punishment around his neck, and he was freed. And subsequently, when he sees a chain placed on the neck of somebody else, he begins to cry. And then he's asked, why are you crying? And Moses replies, You indeed do not know, but I know what suffering it causes. For once that chain was on my neck, and I know the pain it gave me. And this is a reference back to the moment when God meets Moses at the burning bush. And Moses asks, what signs can you give me? And God afflicts him with tzara'at on his hand in that moment. And so the Midrash, remembering this moment, posits that in fact what Moses is experiencing here is not just forgiveness of Miriam, but empathy for what she is going through. He desires her to be healed, not just because he cares for her or because he has forgiven her, but because he understands her pain. When Moses looks at Miriam, he doesn't see a person who sinned against him, or at least not only that. Instead, what he sees is a human being who is suffering in the same way that he has suffered. And so as we move into this high holiday season, this idea of tzara'at, of this punishment that Miriam gets, could perhaps give us three lessons drawn from these three ways of understanding that moment. The first, of course, is about sin and our need to be introspective about the places that we have fallen short. The second is about our need to forgive, just as Moses forgave immediately upon hearing that Miriam had been afflicted. And the third and perhaps most powerful message of all is that forgiveness is not just the result of mercy, but our sense that we too have done wrong, our sense that we have erred and transgressed. And so that when we see those who have sinned against us and they ask for the forgiveness and we see that they are in true pain for having harmed us, that we forgive. We forgive not just because we have mercy, but we also know what it feels like to do wrong and to need to ask for forgiveness. This high holiday season is not about self-righteous dispensing of forgiveness, but it's about the recognition of our own limitations. And so when we see that limitation in others, as Moshe did in Miriam, we say, I know the suffering of that loss. I know that pain. And for that reason, I forgive, and we move forward in a closer, hopefully more complete relationship. Shabbat Shalom.